Summer dust settles over Arborville, Ohio, as families finish barbecues and teens pedal home along quiet lanes. A sudden streak of light tears the sky, brilliant orange and white, trailing sparks before slamming into the woods just beyond town. Flames flare, smoke roils, and a shower of debris scatters across the forest floor. When emergency crews arrive, they find nothing but a smoking crater and deep gouges in the earth. By sunrise, the woods teem with curiosity. Sheriff Adam Levitt stands at the crater's rim, notebook in hand, while witnesses crowd the perimeter tape. Scorched pine needles litter the ground, and amber droplets cling to low-hanging branches. Dr. Dan Hall, the town's pathologist turned ad hoc investigator, kneels by the crater, collecting gelatinous samples in sterile vials. He notes their uncanny elasticity, stretching like taffy, shimmering with a shifting iridescence. Two teenagers, Brian Flagg and his girlfriend Meg Penny, slip past the tape at dawn, armed with flashlights and adolescent bravado. They steel themselves against the unknown. It's probably just some weird rock, Brian jokes, though his voice quavers. Meg shivers as she crouches beside a puddle of bubbling slime. Brian scoops a fingerful. The mass glides over his skin without sticking, leaving only a faint, oily sheen. He drops it. The slime ripples and shrinks back into the earth, as if alive. Footsteps crackle in the underbrush, an unseen presence slithering through the undergrowth. Brian turns, heart pounding, to see Meg frozen. He follows her gaze. The ground convulses, rising in a wave of viscous gel. In an instant, it surges forward, engulfing Brian's ankle. He yanks free, eyes wide, but the creature stretches after him like molten honey. A ragged scream rips from his throat as the slimy reach swallows him to the knee, then the waist. Meg grabs his hand and yanks, pulling him back with every ounce of strength. Finally, Brian breaks free, collapsing on mossy soil, the slime receding into the forest with a soft, wet sigh. They flee, breath ragged, sprinting until the town's first houses appear. Blood seeps through Brian's jeans, matted with amber goo. Meg supports him to her front porch, where she pounds on the door until her friend cat answers. Inside, the girl's father, agitated by early calls, fetches towels and calls for an ambulance. Brian's leg is coated in the strange substance. He shivers as the paramedics wash it away with saline and antiseptic. Yet when they wash, the skin beneath glistens unnaturally, as if the jelly clung to flesh. Across town, local news vans arrive at the edge of the woods. Reporters ask Sheriff Levitt for answers. Meteorite, chemical spill, biological hazard? He offers none. Inside the lab at Arborville University, Dr. Hall examines microscope slides. Cells that engulf foreign matter, membranes that contract and spread. None of it matches known organisms. It's alive, he concludes, voice low, but not on any chart I've ever seen. By midday, rumors spread through town like wildfire. The crater becomes a pilgrimage site. Brave or foolish, residents gather to glimpse the alien slime for themselves. Each droplet appears inert at a glance, but in shadows it pulses, as though waiting. Children dare each other to touch it, dare each other to see how far it reaches before retracting. No one suspects how quickly the threat will leave the woods behind. As night falls again, Arborville braces for what's to come. Barricades are hastily erected, but it is a town used to violence and used to invasion. In living rooms, families peer through blinds at the dark tree line. In hospital wards, Brian waits for test results. And in a lab bathed in fluorescent light, Dr. Hall calls Sheriff Levitt. You need to see this. That evening, Brian and Meg ride in Dr. Hall's pickup back to the crash site, bundled in blankets against a night chill. Sheriff Levitt follows behind his cruiser, blue lights off to avoid spooking wildlife. At the forest edge, the crater yawns at a wound in the earth, its rim ringed with scorched pines and smoldering embers. Dr. Hall ropes off perimeter and instructs Brian to hold back, while Meg shines her flashlight over the crater's slick walls. Dr. Hall kneels, sliding on nitrile gloves to gather fresh samples of the jelly. He seals them in glass jars and places them in a cooler. We'll need this for analysis, he mutters, eyes darting across the crater's slick interior. Sheriff Levitt circles the rim, noting gouges where Blob apparently slithered into soft ground. "We got to seal this thing off," he says, smoothing his brow. "Block every exit." They erect wooden planks across small gullies and drop heavy sandbags into washouts. Anything to contain the substance until morning. Meg fetches extra lumber from the pickup's bed. Brian holds a flashlight at each spot where a droplet pulses. For a moment, the crater seems still, its surface a mirror of moonlight, but then a low thrum echoes through the night air. The blob cells are merging, growing, testing their barrier. Inside the diner's neon glow, waitresses wipe counters as the clock nears midnight. Plates of onion rings steam under heat lamps. The grill sizzle punctuates idle chatter. Suddenly, the telephone shrieks at the back booth. The cook, wiping his hands on an apron, pads toward the ringing set. He lifts the handset just as the floor beneath him quivers. At the crater, Brian notices a thick bead of amber seeping beneath a sandbag, too viscous to stay contained. He splashes it with his flashlight beam. The droplet ripples and doubles in size, slithering into the leaf litter, heading downhill toward town. "It's moving," he gasps. Dr. Hall curses under his breath. "We'll have to warn the diner," he says, snapping the cooler shut. Inside the diner, the cook straightens up, only to feel the floor sag beneath his boots. He steps back, eyes widening, as the tile floor softens into gelatin. Before he can react, a wave of slime surges beneath him, engulfing his legs, then his waist. He screams, shoving free one arm, but the blob's grip is relentless. 1 second he's alive. The next he's swallowed into a silent pool, his panic face reflected in its iridescent surface. The diner door swings open as Meg and Brian burst in, jackets dripping with forest dew. "Blob, it's heading this way," Brian shouts. Patrons flee beneath neon signs. Waitresses duck behind the counter. Dr. Hall storms past them, heart pounding. He grabs a fire extinguisher and sprays a white powder over the advancing slime. The blob bubbles and shrinks momentarily, only to swell larger as if feeding on inert chemicals. Sheriff Levitt charges forward with a riot shield, bracing its edge against the din of the jelly tide. He pushes back, buying time for Meg to usher diners outside. The blob recoils under the combined force of powder and steel, then surges around the shield perimeter, finding every crack, every seam. Its edges flow into vents on the booths and around the door's threshold. In the neon glare, patrons watch in horror as the blob swallows the cook's uniform, his hat bobbing briefly before vanishing. Glass shatters as the slime creeps up on the counter, pooling in a sickly puddle. Meg grips Brian's arm. "It's not just growing," she gasps. "It's eating." The sight of melted ketchup bottles and dripping syrup confirms it. The blob devours everything in its path, metabolizing matter into biomass. Dr. Hall yanks at the hatch to the diner's basement, searching for an escape route. Brian and Sheriff Levitt clear a path, urging remaining customers through the back door. As they flee beneath flickering neon, the blob's glutinous form creeps closer, hungry for more. In that moment, Arborville's quiet facade shatters. This creature is intelligent in its appetite, unstoppable in its advance, and hungry for every living thing it encounters. By dawn, the blob had slithered unseen through Arborville's storm drains, emerging in unlikely places. First reports pinged into dispatch. Strange puddles and alleyways, the scent of ozone mixed with something foul. Sheriff Levitt and Dr. Hall raced to the shopping mall. Its automatic door stuck ajar beneath fluorescent lighting. Inside, early shoppers wandered past storefronts. A candy kiosk lay in ruin, its glass display smeared with amber streaks. The blob pulled in the escalator's toe kicks, climbing car by car in silent menace. A mother and child stepped onto the descending escalator. Moments later, they stumbled as the steps dissolved into jelly, sending them tumbling before the blob engulfed their legs in a suffocating wave. Panic erupted. Teenagers bolted toward exits, dragging toddlers in pajamas. Security guards slammed doors, but the blob oozed beneath gaps, flattening them like wax figures. In the food court, chairs and tables lurched as metal legs yielded to the slime's acid sheen. A deli counter sizzled where slices of meat and cheese had pooled. The blob swallowed them whole, growing plumper at each mouthful. Sheriff Levitt and Dr. Hall arrived on ATVs borrowed from maintenance. Levitt radioed for backup. It's moving too fast. Every surface it touches, it eats. Hall pulled a flask of liquid nitrogen from his case. Let's try freezing it. He unrolled hoses, connecting them to Hall's experimental cryo gun. A blast of vapor jetted across the mall floor, frosting the Blob's surface into crystalline shards. For a moment, the Blob halted, its soft ripples stiffening under frost. Shoppers peered from glass doors as the creature crackled under the cold. Then, with a hiss like steam meeting flame, the slime warmed from within. Shards shattered and melted, feeding the Blob's mass until it boiled into a deeper, more viscous form. The vapor froze only the outer layer. Beneath, the living jelly thrummed with renewed vigor. Fun fact number 1. The 1988 Blob remake used a custom glycerin and latex mixture dyed amber. Effects artists had to swap it out every few takes because real cold made it too rigid to flow organically on camera. Realizing cryogenics might only slow but not stop the creature, Levitt ordered them all evacuated. They sealed the main doors with steel plates, only to hear a soft ooze at the seams. The Blob had pooled on the sidewalk outside, squeezed between locks until it found purchase. With a wet crack, it sheared the steel as if it were paper. Dr. Hall and the sheriff regrouped in the parking lot. Around them, abandoned cars lay half submerged in jelly. License plates and mirrors reflected distorted, bleeding images. Hall frowned at his notes. Water makes it grow. Cold only hardens the surface. What's left? Heat? Acid. He scrawled formulas in the mud until Levitt shook him. Forget science lessons. We need real-world fire. They sprinted to a nearby fuel truck, refilling at the gas pumps. Levitt climbed into the cab, while Hall primed a preloaded fire extinguisher with halon agents. The Blob surged across the pavement in great tongues of slime, hungry for metal and flesh alike. Levitt gunned the engine, spraying diesel and arc toward the advancing ooze. Hall unleashed halon, white clouds dancing over the amber mass. Flames roared as ignition met vapor. The Blob split and hissed, recoiling under the blaze. Shoppers watched from cracked windows as the fire consumed the surface, revealing darker, coagulated veins beneath. Yet even the heat could not stop its heart. As embers fell, the edges oozed back, reconstituting in darker hues. With no other choice, Levitt and Hall retreated under a hail of molten goo, racing for cover behind concrete barriers. The Blob pressed on, relentless as a tide. They knew by now that ordinary arms would fail, and that Arborville's fate depended on a new plan. Brian Flagg and Meg Penny knew brute force wouldn't stop the Blob. It consumed everything it touched. Their only hope lay in freezing it solid long enough to shatter apart. With dawn's first light, they borrowed an industrial freezer truck from Dr. Hall's university contacts. Its insulated trailer stocked with liquid nitrogen. Sheriff Levitt rigged the back doors to stay open, then strung flares across the highway to guide the Blob's relentless advance. Brian and Meg stood by the road, hearts hammering. As the sun rose, townsfolk gathered at a safe distance, watching a slick ribbon of amber ooze toward them. The Blob had grown massive overnight, its surface rippling like molten glass. Brian climbed into the truck's cab and revved the engine. Meg readied the nitrogen hose, fingers steady around the nozzle. When the Blob's leading edge reached the flares, they burst into brilliant orange arcs that drew its attention. The creature pulsed forward, drawn to the warm glow, its cells stretching and bulging as though craving the heat. Levitt fired his shotgun over its back, sending slugs that bounced off harmlessly, but bought precious seconds for the freezer truck to move. Brian punched the accelerator. The trailer lurched forward, engine growling, pursuing the Blob into the open highway. Meg opened the nitrogen valve. A hiss like steam valves opening in a locomotive roared as vapor poured out in a freezing cascade. The liquid nitrogen froze the Blob's outer layer in crystalline armor, turning its surface from slick amber to jagged frost. The truck skidded to a halt as Meg leapt from the cab, wielding a heat lantern to keep the line from freezing solid. She directed the gush of vapor across the frozen shell, thickening the icy crust until it cracked under its own weight. The Blob writhed, its core still molten, splintering the ice like stained glass shards. Sheriff Levitt raised his shotgun again. He fired into the brittle crust. Each blast shattered the frozen shell, sending shards of amber-flecked ice cascading onto the asphalt. Brian and Meg worked in tandem. Brian rang flares closer, cracked the next layer. Meg blasted nitrogen to refreeze, Levitt fire to shatter. Over and over, until the blob's mass reduced to a pile of glittering fragments. As the final shards clinked underfoot, Meg stepped forward and stomped on the largest chunk, reducing it to powdered dust that melted into harmless puddles. Brian let out a breath. He didn't know he'd been holding. The highway lay slick, but now empty. No trace of the creature remained. Fun fact number 2. For the climax, special effects teams used time-compressed footage of real dry ice reacting with warm water to simulate the blob's lethal hardening, then superimposed darker resin gels to create the illusion of shattering frozen jellies on camera. All that remained was the shattered ice and a few dark stains on the asphalt. Proof enough that courage, cunning, and liquid nitrogen had triumphed over unrelenting appetite. By midday, Arborville awakens to a town forever altered. The shattered ice shards of blobs' remains lie scattered across the highway, glittering like broken amber in the sun. Brian and Meg stand side by side, sleeves stained with frost and slime, watching townspeople inch forward to inspect the remnants. Sheriff Levitt directs crews to bag the debris. Each shard treated as hazardous material, a reminder how close the creature came to consuming them all. Dr. Dan Hall arrives in a hazmat suit, kneeling to collect samples of melted residue. He examines the liquid through a handheld refractometer, brow furrowed. Its cellular structure is still active, he reports quietly. We'll need to monitor these samples for weeks. The thought hangs heavy. The blob's threat may not be entirely over. In the streets, neighbors exchange stories of narrow escapes. Mrs. Caldwell's dog yanked beneath her porch, only to be snatched free when the ice hardened. Mr. Foster's car swallowed at the mall entrance, tires spinning in a pool of slime until it froze solid. These tales weave into the town's collective memory, a patchwork of fear and relief. Mayor Jacobs convenes an emergency town meeting in the auditorium, its stage still stained with gelatinous footprints. He offers praise. Thanks to quick thinking and teamwork, we survived. The audience, a mix of shopkeepers, students, and maintenance workers, gives a subdued cheer. Yet beneath the applause, eyes remain wary. In Arborville, the line between curiosity and catastrophe has been redrawn. At the high school, Brian and Meg address the student body. Brian's voice is calm as he describes the meteor's impact and their experiment with liquid nitrogen. Meg, glancing at her notes, emphasizes one lesson. Science can save lives, but unchecked curiosity can unleash horrors. The students nod, some shifting uncomfortably, others scribbling furiously in notebooks, already framing their own science projects around the blob cell structure. Back at home, parents tuck children into bed with extra caution. Doors are double-locked, windows sealed against storms and against the possibility of another alien menace. The town's routines resume, but with a vigilant edge. Frost advisories now include warnings about potential slime outbreaks, and the local weather app flags meteor showers in bright red. Yet amid the caution, life returns. Barbecue smoke drifts once more. The diner reopens with a fresh coat of paint. The mall's escalators hum under cautious but curious feet. Arborville's resilience shines, its people determined not to be defined by fear. Brian and Meg share a late-night milkshake at the reopened diner. The counters chrome gleaming under soft lights. They toast quietly, their mugs clinking. A small victory against an incomprehensible foe. Reflective themes. The blob speaks to the perils of unexamined science and suburban complacency. A chance meteor collision unleashes an entity that defies every safety net. Flooding homes, dissolving buildings, consuming flesh. Yet it is ingenuity, community, and courage that save the day. Homemade barricades, quick-thinking heat and cold traps, and the willingness to risk everything for one another. Arborville learns that vigilance accompanies revival, and that the bonds forged in crisis become the bedrock of survival. Thank you for watching Slightly Spooky Stories, the Sleep Movie Recaps. If the slimy invasion gave you goosebumps, subscribe for more gently unsettling tales. And join us next time when we unravel another quietly haunting classic. Until then, sleep well, but keep one eye open.